It's no secret that I open videos with "it's no secret" too much. I've made it a point to not do that anymore. I've also made it a point to not talk about Flutter as much, but I guess I have to, kind of. This is not your usual Flutter video. This is a React Native video. But why am I talking about React Native when the video title's about Flutter? It's because React Native is becoming a lot more like Flutter with this recent project that's just about to ship 1.0. What the hell am I talking about? React-Native-Skia. What the hell is Skia? What am I talking about here? What is all of this? Well, don't worry, we'll be diving in. Before this is going to make much sense, we need to start with Skia. If you're not already familiar with Skia, it's the core that powered Flutter for a long time. That's somewhat recently changed, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But Skia is the rendering engine that Flutter uses. So when you're rendering some text, that's not using the native text renderer on iOS or Android. It's rendering it in Skia. If you're rendering a picture, it's not using the native picture, whatever the hell your platform has. It's rendering an image within Skia. This engine was built to have a standard platform where things would always look the same regardless of where you're using it. Think of it kind of like a game engine like Unity or Unreal Engine, where if I make something look a certain way in Unity and then I play it on my Xbox, I would expect it to look exactly the same as when I played on my PlayStation. And those types of things where you're trying to make sure all of these platforms behave identically and you're trying to do things different from what the native platform allows, Skia's a really good solution for that. And I've seen it used for some really cool stuff. One of the coolest use cases I've seen for Skia is Rive. Rive's a competitor with things like After Effects, specifically when you're using it in web apps with Lottie. I'm not a big Lottie fan. It's a mess. It's an absolute mess. And Rive was built to be a nice alternative using these fancy new tools for rendering. It can be used for everything from games to fancy animations, which is the main thing it's used for. If you want really elaborate animations like what Duolingo has, Rive is one of the best ways to do it performantly. And it really proves out the power of using the Skia rendering engine. And it's also my cited go-to of the only good Flutter app. There are some others now, there's exceptions, but this is the only app I've seen where Flutter actually makes a ton of sense for what they're building and how they're building it, because they're building an animation studio. The way that text renders is no longer as concerning to them, it's everything else. And I'm actually really pumped with what these guys have built. So huge shout out to Rive. They've really pushed the limits of what you can do with this stuff. And their whole studio is built in Flutter for web. Although I've heard they're rewriting it with some crazy new stuff. I haven't looked into that too much yet. But I trust these guys. And if they're saying this is the way to do it, it's one of the better ways to do it, for sure. Taylor from chat just linked a really useful article here that will help break this down a little bit further. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it will be linked in the description if you're curious. It's a breakdown of how Skia and Flutter relate when you're building. The core points here are that Flutter is an open source UI toolkit developed by Google for building natively compiled apps. And Skia is a powerful open source 2D graphics library by Google, which has various APIs that work across various hardware and software platforms for creating high quality graphics in their applications. Flutter's almost a template for building on Skia with a bunch of build tools, with a bunch of UI layers, with their material UI kit that I know a lot of Flutter devs don't necessarily enjoy. Flutter's all of these pieces on top. It's kind of the glue between UI components, Dart, and the Skia rendering engine. Where things get even more fun is that Flutter isn't always using Skia anymore. They've had enough issues using it on iOS that they've kind of given up, and they built a new engine from scratch to try and solve all of these issues. Specifically the early onset jank, which is when you first open a Flutter app, things are rough for a while. And that's been fixed with this new rendering engine, which is very different. And it also means that at the very least, right now on iOS, you're not using Skia for new Flutter apps using the best practices. Skia is still used on Android as far as I know. I was asked to not quote Luke on a thing, so I will not do that. But yeah, Skia seemed to have a lot of issues on iOS, so they're building this new model on top of Impeller instead. And I will say from the apps I've played with that use this on my iPhone, it feels comically better than the Flutter experiences I've had in the past. But we're not here to talk about Impeller. We're not here to talk about Rive. We're not here to talk about really Flutter, because the thing that's interesting today is React-Native-Skia. Because a lot of developers in the React Native world realized Skia could actually be quite valuable to them. Why would we want this when we have native bindings? In case you're somehow not familiar with the core differences between React Native and Flutter, an important detail that is most of the core difference is that React Native, despite being in JavaScript, is actually quite a bit more native than Flutter. Because React Native doesn't have its own rendering engine or way of doing UI. It's just a JavaScript layer that tells the native platform what to put where. So if I'm building an app in React Native and I put it on iOS and I put it on Android and I'm using like the platform native tab bar or button, those apps are going to look different on those different platforms because those different platforms have different core primitives. So React Native doesn't guarantee a perfectly consistent standard experience across different devices and platforms. It's not a web view like so many people like to think it is. You're not actually running a browser in your phone when you're using React Native on your phone. You're still running a native app. In fact, Flutter is a good bit closer to what people seem to think React Native is, where it's not using any of the native primitives or any of the native UI that your phone has. Almost everything you see in Flutter is either a recreation of native UI or just straight up a screenshot of it with text overlaid on top, which is why if you use a Flutter app, you'll actually notice lots of quirks in the UI that, if you're used to the polished iOS experience, feel wrong. This is one of my favorite examples of the curse that is Flutter. After 7 years, Flutter now renders text on iOS almost correctly. Where before, when you used large font sizes, they just spaced the font entirely incorrect. And these types of things add up, and the experience it feels jank. It really does. And it was basically impossible to make an app that feels native with Flutter because underneath it wasn't native. Where with React Native, it is native underneath, which means when you render text, you're using native text rendering tools. When you're rendering a picture, you're using native picture rendering tools. When you render a scroll view, you're rendering a native scroll view, which, by the way, if you're using a Flutter app, a really good way to test that is Flutter. Scroll with 2 fingers and it scrolls twice as fast. I'm not joking. So why would we ever want to adopt this stuff in React Native land? Well, not everything has a good native solution, like animations. If I want a really fancy animation, that might not be a thing the native iOS platform supports. And it's certainly not going to be a thing the native Android platform supports. But if I have a rendering engine or platform like Skia, I no longer have to pick and choose where with Flutter, text is worse, but animations are better. React Native, text and native parts are better, but animations way worse. React-Native-Skia's goal is to solve that problem. If you haven't heard, Shopify's all in on React Native, like all in. There's even been like funny tweets from Toby, the CEO, about how betting on React Native has been so beneficial to their business, and other companies that bailed, like Airbnb, missed out on striking gold. Shopify really does feel like they struck gold with React Native. When compared to the performance of their native apps, it's often even better because of how much simpler the code and architecture ends up being and how well optimized a lot of those native bindings are, especially after the architecture overhaul, which I have a video that's hopefully already out by the time this one's here. It'll be linked in the description if it is. React Native Skia was built by Shopify because there were certain things that React Native didn't do great. Certainly not for multi-platform, mostly animation. And they wanted really nice animations for a lot of their apps. Things like the Shop app, which is one of the most beautiful apps I've ever used, has a lot of fancy little animations, and getting those details just right across platforms. Yeah, good luck doing that in React Native or even just native. If you can render effectively what's a mini game engine inside of your app to do those types of animations, that's a way better experience. Let's see what they have to say about this here before we dive into the new announcements. With the latest advancements in the React Native architecture, allowing direct communication between JavaScript and the native sides, we saw an opportunity to provide an integration for Skia, arguably the most versatile 2D graphics engine. We wondered, how should these two pieces of technology play together? Last December, we published the first alpha release of React Native Skia, and 89 releases later over the past 12 months. We went from offering a model that decently fit React Native and Skia together to a fully tailored declarative architecture that's highly performant. 1 renderer, 3 platforms, and counting. Interesting. Obviously, React Native runs on iOS and Android, and not as obviously it runs on web. It's cool seeing them targeting all 3. Because again, React doesn't necessarily care where you render it. I'd almost compare this to something like React 3 Fiber, which if you're not already familiar somehow, you should watch more of my videos because I talk about React 3 Fiber a lot. It's a 3JS-based canvas renderer for React. So you write React code like a box component, you render a canvas, and you pass it components the same way you would in traditional React, but these render in a 3D space. They've even made crazy stuff like 3D flex boxes in UIs. And this is possible because React doesn't care where its virtual DOM gets thrown to. It can go to the real DOM, it can go to native, it can go to canvas, and now it can go to Skia, which is actually really cool, especially if you have a little bit of your app that's in Skia, and then the rest is traditional React, whatever DOM you want to render it to. This is dope. And here we see really consistent animations across all platforms. The syntax is actually really nice. This looks quite a bit like React 3 Fiber, which is cool to see. But here, they're drawing a blend color group, and you can just render this, and it works. This is so cool. And they check to make sure the image matches their saved screenshot. Because the renderer is not coupled with the DOM or native APIs, we can actually use it for testing in Node. That's really cool. That is actually nuts. On React Native, the Skia host API is available via the JS interface, the JSI, which, again, check out that React Native architecture video if you haven't already. We go deep on the JSI there. Exposing the C++ Skia API to JS. On the web, the Skia API is available via CanvasKit, a WebAssembly build of Skia. We like the CanvasKit API from the get-go. The Skia team did a great job of conciseness and completeness with this API. It's also based on Flutter, kind of, which showed how great the relevance was for their use cases. We immediately decided to make our host API fully compatible with it. An interesting side effect of this compatibility is that we can use our renderer on the web immediately. In fact, the graphics motions we built for the original project announcement were written using react-native-skia itself via Remotion, a tool used to make videos in React. I have been wanting to make a long video about Remotion for a while. You can actually create and edit video with React code, which is an insane concept by itself. But the thought of building 2D animations with Skia, also with React, in order to generate a proper fancy video is so cool. And it's really dope seeing the stuff people are doing with these tools and technologies and the way that they're composing together. Again, this is kind of the magic of React that no other ecosystem has, where theoretically, could you have attached Flutter to something like this? Possibly. But what are you going to attach it to? You have to invent all the other parts. And we're even seeing this with Rive, which I mentioned before, where they have to invent so much shit in order to make their animation studio. Whereas with this, once you get Skia working with React, all of a sudden you can add it to all these other React things, and you end up with this crazy composability that just doesn't exist in other places. It's so cool. And this is honestly the magic of React that just isn't matched anywhere else in software. This level of composition is almost Unix-like in how small and capable these parts are. And I'm so excited for Skia to no longer be a thing I have to adopt Flutter for, and instead it's a thing that I can use to make my React and React Native experiences even better than they were before. So cool. One more important detail here is that React Native Skia works out of the box with the Expo Dev client and the Expo Go client. So if you just install the Expo app on your phone, spin up a project, scan the QR code, and start using React Native Skia, it works. That's so cool. I'll dig into all this in a minute if it makes sense to after the announcement video, but I want to watch this. It's a bit long, but I'm actually really excited. So let's do it. This is the React Native Skia 1.0 announcement.
Hello, React Native developers.
But that cut wasn't me. Holy shit.
Hello, React Native.
Don't do the pan shot if you don't finish the pan shot. I'm known for aggressive cuts, but I sit still to the best of my ability. Don't do the drone shot in if you're not going to hold it.
Native developers, I hope you are well. William here, recording from beautiful Zurich, Switzerland. Thank you, Landing, for trusting React Native Skia while working on this project. We have seen incredible examples of indie developers, flourishing startups, and large tech companies using it to power incredible experiences in React Native. Shopify, of course, uses it to power rich analytics to millions of entrepreneurs. VoidPet, which won the Google Play Store App Award last year, uses React Native.
Oh shit, VoidPet. Let's see in chat who knows VoidPet and specifically who made VoidPet. I want to see. YouTube and Twitch chat. Let's see the name. There we go. There we go. Our boy Ben getting featured. Totally deserves it. I have to check in on him. It's been a bit. But yeah, Ben Awad, the original hot React YouTuber. I know that I'm building on top of the legacy of very talented individuals, but it's without question, I would not be doing this if it wasn't for Ben. So cool seeing him featuring inside of this type of stuff. But yes, that is Ben Awad's work. And I also interviewed Ben over a year ago. It's probably close to 2 now. Yeah, year and a half ago, where I interviewed Ben Awad to figure out what the hell he's been up to lately. And I'm surprised this video didn't perform better. It's actually really interesting just chatting with Ben all about the craziness of what he was building. And ended up hanging out with him after, helping get some investments and shit. Cool stuff. Really cool to see him featured in this. Back to this. VoidPet went all in on React Native, which honestly I was unsure of initially because it's a game. I would have guessed that it would use more game-friendly tech, like Unity. But since Ben was already so familiar with React and specifically wanted a lot of like the hot reloading and like remote over-the-air type stuff that you get from going all in on React, it ended up being a really good choice. But also, animations in React are nowhere near as complex and capable as they are in something like Skia with Flutter. So having access to this is a huge win.
Skia to bring us these rich and delightful creatures. Starlink also uses React Native Skia to power analytics and other delightful effects. Tejon brings sport fans around the world the best of the Six Nations.
Okay, that was a smooth animation. It's silly to overhype that, but I don't care. That was really cool. Watch how the board shifts on its Z-axis.
Tejon brings sport fans around the world the best of the Six Nations.
That looks
tournament.
So good.
Orca, the leader in sea navigation, uses React Native Skia to bring rich navigation data to its users. Stocked, the leading app for indoor climbing, uses Skia to guide climbers with their problems. And the Zenith Academy Plus app uses react-native-skia to provide incredibly engaging studying experience. And Flipcards, the photo matching game, is just incredibly playful. We are absolutely blown away to see everything you have built using react-native-skia. So this morning, we would like to take the next step in our relationship with the industry. And to get things started, here are the people who are championing react-native-skia. From Shopify, Colin Gray, principal developer of mobile, and Mustafa Ali, director of engineering.
Good morning, and welcome to this special announcement.
If y'all don't know Colin, he's actual wizard. He gave my favorite talk at Infinite Red's conference last year, Chain React. This video technically isn't sponsored by them, but I do have a code that gets you money off. It's one of my favorite conferences I've ever been to. If you're into this mobile shitposting stuff, it fundamentally changed my understanding of how mobile devs think and approach problems. And Colin's talk was incredible. We chatted a bunch after. It's the conference for people who nerd out about this stuff. I'll have a link in the description with my discount code in it. The code's just Theo. So Chain React's in July. It's in Portland, Oregon. It was an awesome event, and you can use my code for discount, $50 to $100. Don't remember exactly. Highly recommend it. Check these guys out. Anyways.
We are celebrating a significant milestone in the world of React Native development, the release of react-native-skia 1.0.
2 years ago, Shopify saw the huge potential of a small open source project from Christian Felch and William Candion, and we've been thrilled to see how it has grown to become a mainstay in the React Native ecosystem. Within Shopify, we've watched it evolve from an interesting proof of concept to powering our most visually stunning views. There's simply no better way to render custom graphics and interactive animations.
As we'll see from today's demos, we have the privilege of having 5 members of the React Native-Skia community walk us through 5 features that are part of this release. Thank you to all the people who have contributed bug fixes and reported issues. You have helped make this a community-driven project, and we couldn't have gotten to 1.0 without your support.
Watch this whole video if you want to hear about all of these inner workings and details. The stuff is really cool. I want to see if there's any really good demos in here that are worth showcasing.
But React Native developers, wait a second. What unites us is our love for React's declarative model. There is something so incredibly joyful about the JSX syntax and React's composition model. And we benefit from a strong type system, a type system which, by the way, has become leaps and bounds ahead of programming languages which were typed from the ground up. But I digress. So when we are looking at these examples, what we really want to be looking at are these beautifully, deeply nested.
It's really hard for me to not go on a type safety and JSX tangent right here, because everything he said there was based in true, and it will get me in trouble if I go any further. Okay, this one is funny because I know this type of thing seems relatively trivial to drag and drop stickers onto a picture. But I know from experience, this is not the case. Specifically, I know that it took Twitch a lot longer than you would imagine it should have in order for them to add the stories feature on iOS and Android, because they had to have a way to add emojis and stickers and things on top of an image that was platform consistent across iOS and Android. And that ended up being a massive challenge for them, because getting that type of layer to work on both platforms was nearly impossible. Whereas here, you do it once with React and React Native-Skia, and it just works. It just works. That is magical. There's whole categories of industries that have been basically impossible to build outside of just doing the iOS app that are now not only possible, but economically viable and worthwhile. This is possibly the biggest release in terms of letting Android be there day one of almost anything in the modern application development world. It's silly that this one example just made a lot more of it click for me. But I know how painful it is to make something like this. And I know many developers who have chosen to not support Android at first or even at all because of how hard it is to do things like this. By the way, that literally includes Google. Google has had many an instance where they shipped an app that was really interactive on iOS first and then delayed releases for Android and then gave up because maintenance was too expensive. Like the Inbox app, which was their alternative interface for Gmail that was actually quite good, but maintaining it and all the animations and gestures and stuff was enough of a burden that they said, screw it, and axe the project. Those types of things become so much more viable with a platform like this. And I'm way more hyped now that I am seeing practical use cases that aren't just animations, but are actual new ways to render and create things as a developer and even as a user. It's also particularly ironic that the people who tend to hate on React Native the most are the anti-web technology people that are huge Linux and Android neckbeards. So, eat shit. Your platform's only viable because of Electron and now because of this.
The system has to offer. For instance, here we use gesture handler on the Skia Canva. Now, let's follow the thread of integrating with Reanimated. And let's have a look at 3 kinds of animations. Interactive animations, like diving into analytics using gestures, for instance. Large animations where we have a simple animation driver, here a gesture, and we use it to interpolate the state of thousands of elements. And fully scripted animations. There are no surprises there. The whole world is known in advance.
The art team at Duolingo is so cracked. Did you guys see that animation? What the hell?
Here a gesture, and we use it to interpolate the state of thousands of elements. And fully scripted animations. There are no surprises there. The whole world is known in advance.
That transition, what the fuck? How did they do that so seamlessly?
There are no surprises there.
The one where it turns into blocks. I'm going to frame by frame it. So you can see here, oh, it's just the next frame does that, but their eye levels are the same, which allows it to feel smoother.
World is known in advance.
But that was so good though. And using the color background changes to justify like bigger shifts. That's such a tasteful, subtle animation. The amount of things that happen in the 4 seconds there is just insane. And also limited by the 30 FPS on YouTube, because I know that's smooth as hell on mobile. One more big announcement that is part of the react-native-skia 1.0 is that CanvasKit-JS is now also released and in technical preview. Very exciting stuff.
Today, we are making CanvasKit-JS open source. Still a very experimental project, but we think it has strong legs. And the way it is built is very interesting. There are 2 layers. The first one, we call it Canva 2D Next. We asked the question, how would the Canva 2D API would look like if it could power react-native-skia experiences out of the box? It would contain support for image filters and layers, as well as providing support for basic path operations. And this is effectively what we have built with this layer. Once we have our Canva 2D on steroid up and running, all we have to do is provide a compatibility layer. If we do our job well, a Skia client should almost be unable to distinguish between CanvaKit WASM and CanvaKit-JS. We wanted to put this idea to the test and run CanvaKit-JS on a Flutter web app, which has absolutely no prior knowledge of CanvaKit.
Pretty hilarious that they're testing their developments to make React Skia stuff better by using their new engine to power a Flutter demo, because Skia and Flutter are so tied. If you want to know your Skia polyfills are working, don't test it on React, test it on Flutter. It's actually really cool that the Flutter ecosystem is going to get much better because now there's a bunch of web experts diving in, fixing all of the problems with Flutter and his web compat. Shout out to Samir. He always finds the craziest stuff in these tools. The issue with Flutter Web not using web standards and using its own crazy rendering engine is that all the things you expect the web to do for you, it just doesn't. Like selecting text. In order for Flutter Web to work with text selection, like when you drag and drop to select some text to copy it, since Flutter Web's using Canvas, not native text rendering, they actually will put a DOM element of text in front of whatever you're doing here, overlaid, to select exactly what you had selected in the text, and it misses like 30% of it. Like, this is what it looks like to select some text in a Flutter for web app, because the Flutter team, no offense to them, is just not that interested in building things in the web. Flutter is trying to build a new rendering engine and a new way of thinking of applications. They're not trying to follow web standards. React developers are generally speaking a little more interested in web standards. I know they get a lot of shit for it, but they are trying to use the web and the browser for what it's good for. And as such, when you render some text, you can render some text. The reason I bring this up here is it seems like a lot of the things that were kind of missed by the Flutter team because they're not focused on web are going to be improved meaningfully because a bunch of React Native devs and React as a whole devs are going to start using the engine that powers a lot of the Flutter stuff. It's just cool to see the web being embraced by Flutter's engine, even if the Flutter team aren't the ones doing it. Once again, it feels like React just kind of always wins, not because it's by default the best solution, but because its composability and its gigantic community result in these cool innovations that happen elsewhere being brought in. And it is really cool to see the strengths of what Flutter could do through the Skia engine being brought all the way over to React Native and also React Web. So once again, huge shout out to everyone at Shopify and all of the other contributors who made this possible. Shout out to everybody who built Flutter and Skia to the point where these things are even usable, and everyone in chat who helped me find all the sources throughout this. If you want to learn more, I highly recommend watching that whole video by William because it was really, really good. Until next time, peace nerds.